Can you build in the city without getting your hands dirty with corruption? The sky's the limit in High Rise. Welcome to Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Melissa Delp.
And I'm Kevin Delp. Today we're looking at High Rise, a 1 to 4 player city building game designed by Gil Hova and published by Formal Ferret Games.
We have a prototype copy. The game's coming to Kickstarter soon. Now this copy, it does not represent the final design or quality of the components.
Let's look at those components now. There's a game board, blueprint cards, floor pieces, cards, tiles, and tokens.
The goal of the game is to have the most points, and you do that by constructing tall buildings. There are 3 different ways you can play the game. There's a full game, which goes over 3 rounds, and then the standard and introductory games are only 2 rounds, and the specific setup instructions are going to be slightly different depending on the variation you're playing. In general, you'll place out the blueprint card and place premium floors on it. Tenant cards go out on the board in the different cities. You'll also place out the bonus tiles. You might need to randomly place floors on some of these. Players receive their player pieces.
Initial turn order is determined by which board you receive. On your turn, you'll move your piece to an open action space on the board. The rules, though, are that you can only go forward in a clockwise direction. So if you skip something, you can't go back, and you can only visit one space in a zone.
Turn order is determined by whichever piece is furthest back, so it's possible for the same player to take multiple turns in a row. When you reach the stop zone, you have to stop there. Once all players are in this zone, the round ends.
But what do all those action spaces do? Well, we're not going to describe every single one, but we'll talk to you about the types of actions and why you take them. Some spaces give you specific floor pieces. Then you can choose to draw a random floor piece from the bag, but you'll gain a corruption if you do.
When you have the floor pieces that match a design on the round's blueprint, you'll want to stop at a building zone. You can usually build in any neighborhood, but if it's not the one shown in the building zone, you'll get some corruption. You score 1 victory point for each floor in your building, and you can take the benefit of the tenant card you build on.
If you land on a tenant card, you must use that card's ability. Sometimes it's an immediate power, like drawing floors from the bag. Or you might gain a tile that has a one-time or ongoing power. If the card has a building, the owner can draw a random floor from the bag.
Some spaces let you draw floors, exchange floors to get the colors you need, and reduce your corruption level. There are penalties at the end of each round and the game based on how much corruption you have.
As you move around the board, you'll pass these areas that have bonus tiles. When you pass one, you can take one of the bonuses, if there's still any available. They don't refresh until the next round.
At the end of the first round, you'll go through each neighborhood and give a point to the owner of the tallest building there. The tallest building in the game also scores a point. 1 point might not sound like a whole lot, but later in the game, the point values increase, and then by the end of the game, you're scoring not only the tallest building, but the second tallest and third tallest.
At the end of the round, the player with the most corruption moves their marker back to the next space with a marker on it, and loses points equal to the number of spaces they moved. At the end of the game, all players lose the amount of points shown on their corruption space, and those with the most corruption take extra penalties.
So throughout the game, you're earning most of your points when you build, and then you may earn some or lose some at the end of the rounds based on the height of your buildings and how much corruption you have. Whoever has the most points wins.
Now, what we've described is pretty much just the basics. There's a lot more going on in the game, like the tiles. There's like elevators that help you with your score. There's ultra plastic tiles. Those are like wilds. Then there's premium floors and spires. They can help with the height of your buildings.
And then there's the issue of the neighborhoods filling up. When that happens, you can think about demolishing buildings. So you can demolish the shortest building in a neighborhood if you can build one that's taller than it. Now, the person whom you demolish probably won't like that too much, but as a consolation, they get to keep some of the floors from that building.
But only if there's room left in their construction yard. Each player's construction yard shows how many floor pieces they can hold. If they gain more floors than they have room for, they can either discard down to their limit or gain another construction yard by moving up on the corruption track.
Managing your corruption is a tricky thing because a lot of those action spaces are going to encourage you to gain corruption to do a more powerful action. Some of them you have to take corruption just to do the action at all. Now, for most of the round ends, it's only the player with the most corruption who gets penalized, so that can kind of give you a false sense of security that the corruption isn't that bad, it's not going to really hurt me. But at the end of the game, every player is going to lose points based on their corruption level. So you really do have to weigh the benefits of those actions with the potential penalty that's going to come from the corruption.
Now, the one-way track in the game presents your gameplay with some interesting choices. How far should you push ahead? Maybe there's a place out there, the spot that you really want. Will it be available? Or should you push really far ahead, but then you're probably going to get fewer actions than the other players?
There's another game that we like to play called Sir Francis Drake, and it has a similar action mechanic that's a one-way track. And I think both games give you some similar results. It gives a little bit of a push your luck feel, like Kevin was saying. How far do you go? How much can you get if you do shorter jumps? And then there's the aspect of reading the other players. What spaces does Kevin want? Is he going to build this round? Or, oh no, he doesn't have enough, so I think that space is safe for me. So there's that aspect that goes into the game.
Now, all the information in the game is pretty much open through the whole game. Like, you can see what players have, like what floors they have, how tall their buildings are, there's tenant tiles. So you can sort of make predictions in the game and probably figure out what other players are trying to do. Now, each round there's those new bonus tiles, but once they're out, you can see what they are for the game. So, I mean, there's that.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of random elements in the game. The biggest thing is probably when you are drawing tiles out of the bag, the blind draws. You just don't know which floors you're going to get. You may get lucky or you might not. Most of the variability is going to come in during setup. You randomly choose a blueprint for each round. There are a lot of bonus tiles for each round, and they are randomly selected. The introductory game has a specific set of tenant cards, but the other game variants use a random selection.
I want to mention again that the components you've seen during this video are prototypes and are not representative of the final product. Icons, designs, sizes, materials, they're going to be different. The wooden pieces are going to be injection molded plastic bits. The floors will be stackable and loosely lock into each other.
For the weight and complexity of this game, I would put it into the medium category. There are a lot of components when we opened up the box. It was a little overwhelming, but we were working with prototype components, so that was part of it. Once we got into the game and the flow of it, it actually did flow really well, and we were able to understand what was going on. As far as player interaction goes, it's mainly indirect. There is the aspect of demolishing people's buildings, though.
And players could take the spots that you want to go on. So, but if you're looking for a city building game with this Francis Drake type action selection mechanic, then check out High Rise from Formal Ferret Games on Kickstarter, and we'd love for you to subscribe to Tantrum House.
Something like that's gonna be my motto.
Oh,